Many Steeler fans are really upset with the hiring of the new offensive coordinator, which is former Atlanta Falcons head coach Arthur Smith. Now, Arthur Smith, his time as a head coach in Atlanta was very unmemorable. And the only memory that you have of Arthur Smith as Atlanta's head coach is the fact that he used his best players as decoys, couldn't get his best playmakers on offense the ball, and it's a large reason why he now is the OC for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But for the people who believe this is a bad hire because of what went wrong with Arthur Smith in Atlanta, I would like to remind you that the last time Mike Tomlin hired the offensive coordinator that was a failed head coach, he had the Killer Bees, Big Ben, Le'Veon Bell, and Antonio Brown playing the best football of their careers, and that was Todd Haley. When Todd Haley got hired by Mike Tomlin, he was just fired by Kansas City as their head coach, and he was offensive-minded, and he didn't really do a lot with that offense. But he came to Pittsburgh, and Big Ben and AB and Le'Veon were balling out under him. Arthur Smith, he had a lot of success when he was the offensive coordinator with the Tennessee Titans under Mike Vrabel. He had Ryan Tannehill playing the best football of his career. Derrick Henry was chugging along. A.J. Brown, really early into his career, was starting to cement himself as one of the best up-and-coming receivers in the league at that time. And then Corey Davis. Corey Davis, who in most people's eyes was a major draft disappointment, being a former first-round pick, not really playing at that high of a level. He got the most out of Corey Davis that anybody was able to get out of him. So Arthur Smith has shown the ability to know how to get the best players on his offense to football. And you got to be really naive to think that Arthur Smith is about to become the play caller on the Steelers offense, not use Deontay Johnson and George Pickens, and neither one of those guys have anything to say about it. Like, one thing we know about George Pickens and Deontay Johnson is that they're going to let you know when they're frustrated, they're going to let you know when they want the football, and they're going to let you hear it. So if Arthur Smith tries to play that shit when he's not going to give George Pickens and Deontay the football, of course those guys are going to get frustrated. We're going to see it on the sidelines, and that's going to put pressure on them. And Mike Tomlin's last two OCs weren't hired by him. Matt Canada was only hired because the Rooneys wanted him to be the OC. They wanted him to be promoted from QB's coach. They were the ones who made that decision, not Mike Tomlin, and that's public information. You can look that up. All you got to do is Google who hired Matt Canada, and you will see that it was the Rooneys who had their hands involved in that mostly. And Randy Fichtner, Mike Tomlin hired him, but it wasn't really a move that Mike Tomlin wanted to make. It was really a move that Mike Tomlin made because Todd Haley and Big Ben didn't have a good relationship. Big Ben wanted Todd Haley gone, so Mike Tomlin appeased Big Ben as what any good head coach would do when he got a Hall of Fame quarterback. And he hired the guy to be the OC that Big Ben had the best relationship with. And ultimately, when Big Ben retired, it didn't work out. You bring in Matt Canada, that didn't work out because that wasn't the decision that Mike Tomlin really had too much of a say in. So now, with Mike Tomlin being able to go out there and perform an OC search with him having the say in who gets the nod, I trust his judgment. Mike Tomlin, he hasn't had a lot of postseason success, and the Rooneys addressed that. They said, we want to get back to having success in the postseason. We're tired of going one and done in the playoffs every single time we make it. Mike Tomlin knows that his job security is in question and that he needs to produce some results, and they need to win in the playoffs starting now, and getting Arthur Smith is going to be a big stepping stone to be able to accomplish that. Everybody's talking about, well, is this the right guy for Kenny Pickett? Like, Kenny Pickett needs to be better. Like, there's not enough Steelers fans that put enough accountability on Kenny Pickett for where he's at in his career. Yeah, he had a bad offensive coordinator, but Matt Canada wasn't the guy on the field who was overthrowing wide receivers when they were open on 4-yard drag routes. Kenny Pickett had Deontay Johnson and George Pickens throwing temper tantrums on the sidelines. When Mason Rudolph took over as QB1, Deontay Johnson and George Pickens look like they have fun playing football again. Kenny Pickett isn't that good. Arthur Smith just needs to make Kenny Pickett look serviceable. Yeah, you can say in hindsight, this move should be made for the development of Kenny Pickett, but really is made just to see if he can get anything out of this dude. He's not a good QB. And even if he reaches his potential, his potential is no more better than a top 15 quarterback at best. So I'd rather Pittsburgh bring back Mason Rudolph and they run it back with Mason Rudolph, find a quarterback the year after, than give Kenny Pickett just the reins to the Lamborghini. Arthur Smith, also when he was the head coach of the Atlanta Falcons, for all the people that said he was only good because he gave it to Derrick Henry, Atlanta still had one of the better rushing attacks in the National Football League, which is something that Mike Tomlin and the Roonies also have stated several times that they want to get back to. They want to make sure that the offense focuses running the football and the importance that it has on winning games. And you think about what the run game has always meant to the Steelers franchise. When you think about the Pittsburgh Steelers football, you always think two things: great defense, great run game. Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris are one of the best 1-2 punches in the NFL right now, especially with how they played after week 9. They were damn near unstoppable. So Arthur Smith, with his focus and how he specializes in the run game and his run scheme, this should be one of the best rushing attacks in the NFL next season. And when it comes to Kenny Pickett, he can be a good game manager in an offense like this because what he does best is he doesn't turn over the football. Now, there are times when Kenny Pickett has his moments, but, regardless who's at QB, Arthur Smith isn't going to have anybody playing like a superstar. But just because this dude is a failed head coach doesn't mean that he was a bad hire by Mike Tomlin as offensive coordinator. There are plenty of head coaches who have failed in the league that have just been great coordinators, not cut out to be head coaches. Josh McDaniels is a great offensive coordinator. He's not a good head coach. There are other head coaches, that are good coordinators, but just not cut to be head coaches, because being a head coach involves more than just knowing X's and O's. You got to be a good leader of men. You got to have good people skills. Arthur Smith was lacking some of the necessary skills to be a good head coach, and that's why he failed in Atlanta. But that doesn't mean that this is going to be an awful hire by Pittsburgh. This was probably one of the best hires that Pittsburgh can make. When I first saw the news, I said, this is solid. People saying Airbnb is not good. Like, if you watched any Washington Commanders game, you would see that Airbnb was not it. Hell, go watch the game that they got blown the hell out by the Dallas Cowboys. They had like 3 3rd-and-1, 4th-and-1 opportunities, and they didn't go for a quarterback sneak on any time, on any of them. Like, Airbnb has really questionable play calling. He's not as good as what people think. People give Airbnb way too much props. Byron Leftwich got fired and replaced for Dave Canales, and he did God's work with Baker Mayfield. Like, there were not better offensive coordinators, at least more qualified offensive coordinators than Arthur Smith. He wasn't a good head coach, but at least he's a good offensive coordinator, and his rap sheet supports that. If Mike Tomlin would have been fired, then he would have been replaced by a guy who many people would have put as the number 1 pick to replace him. It would have been Mike Vrabel. And guess who would have came with Mike Vrabel if he was coaching Pittsburgh right now? Arthur Smith. Like, Arthur Smith is a really good offensive coordinator. He's just not a great head coach. And this is somebody that also probably wants to be a head coach again. So he has more motivation to, do well, succeed in Pittsburgh, a good organization, a stable organization under Mike Tomlin, that he should succeed and maybe he gets another opportunity. Mike Tomlin doesn't make terrible staff hires necessarily. There are a couple of staff hires that he's made along the last couple of years that have been a little bit questionable, but we don't know if those were completely his decisions or if that was the Roonies who made those decisions. But with Mike Tomlin being the guy who we know made this hire, I have trust in his judgment. And despite him being a coach that underachieves nearly every single season, not winning the playoffs, at least you know that you're going to get a 9-win season consistently out of Mike Tomlin. And because of that, if you can just get a little bit more juice out of the offense, that's the difference between 2 wins and being a 11-win team in the playoffs and being a 9-win team looking outside of the playoffs. Arthur Smith, this was a pretty good hire by Mike Tomlin. He's qualified, good resume. He's been able to produce serviceable offenses in the past. He was really good with the Tennessee Titans at one point. So it's like, I don't see how this doesn't work out for Pittsburgh. People are just looking at what he did in Atlanta. It's a difference when you're running the show and when you're working under somebody. And Mike Tomlin isn't about to let his best players be underutilized. Arthur Smith still has to answer to him. And if Mike Tomlin says, give Deontay and Pickens the ball, guess what Arthur Smith has to do? Find a way to get them the damn football. So I like the hire of Arthur Smith as the offensive coordinator of Pittsburgh. I think a lot of Steelers fans who are against this hire are overreacting. Like Mike Tomlin, I trust his judgment. The fact that he's never had a losing season means that there's something that he does well as a head coach. And I'm going to give him the benefit of a doubt. And this is a big prove-it year for Mike Tomlin. And this was the necessary hire that he had to make to turn things around and get this offense back on the right track. If Mason Rudolph was balling out with the interim OC and Kenny Pickett was only putting up 16 points in his best performance, then I think that tells you more about Kenny Pickett than it does who was calling the plays in that situation, in my opinion. So if Kenny Pickett just isn't good, I don't think it's because of Arthur Smith. I just think Kenny Pickett isn't it. And the Steelers just don't want to admit that. I really want them to bring back Mason Rudolph, make him QB1, and then we run it with him. And then upgrade later on. But Arthur Smith, at least he's going to get the most out of the run game. I don't think he's going to make the same mistake calling plays for Pittsburgh that led to his demise in Atlanta. He's going to get the ball to the Steelers' best players on offense. And it only makes sense because it's like, if you're Mike Tomlin, why would you allow the same issues that, caused problems in the locker room last year to transpire again? He's going to make sure that Arthur Smith gets the best players the ball. And that's the key to winning if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers offensively. Get your best playmakers the football. Why wouldn't you give the ball to your best players on offense that give you the best chance to win?